Hi, friends. This is the evening of Friday, September 11th. My name is Susan Moseley, and this is my weekly meditation. I normally tape my meditations on Friday, and sometimes morning, sometimes afternoon. And today, because of the way things went all day long, I'm doing it in the evening. But I've been thinking all day about the fact that this date, September 11th, is the anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks 19 years ago. You're going to get this meditation and be listening to this on Saturday, September 12th. But I needed to recognize and remember that tragic day in honor of all those who lost their lives in the attacks and in the heroic rescue efforts. Do you remember where you were when you heard the news about the attacks? I remember very well. We were living in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and it was a Tuesday morning. The children had gone off to school. Jim had gone to work, and I was home when I realized that our daughter Sarah had left something. I can't remember whether it was her lunch or her homework or something, but she left something at the house that I needed to take to the middle school. So I got in the car about 9 or 9:15. I had not been listening to the TV or the radio since since the kids left for school. So I didn't know anything. I turned on the radio in the car and I turned it on to NPR, which is what I'm normally listen to. And I wasn't sure what I was listening to. It wasn't like a normal news broadcast. This was obviously something that was happening at the moment, but it was so traumatic that I didn't imagine it was happening in America, in our country. I was thinking it was somewhere else in the world. And uh, so I was thinking about changing the station, maybe listening to oldies songs. But uh, while I was driving, or while I was getting ready to change the channel, I heard the words New York and realized that, oh, whatever is happening in New York City. And I was so, really the best word I can think of is discombobulated. I wasn't sure what I was listening to. So I had to pull off the road and listen for a little bit. And as I sat there and it began to dawn on me that this um, was an unreal, surreal experience of terror that was happening right on the East Coast. I couldn't quite get my head around it, but I did finally start the car back and went on to the middle school, and everyone in the school was gathered around TVs. So that was pretty traumatic. That evening, when we were glued to the TV, like everyone else around the country, at one point, Jim turned to me and said, "The world will never be the same again." And he was right. One commentator that night said that Americans would forever mark their history as either, all those things that happened pre 9/11 and everything else post 9/11. In many ways, that has been true. the world, at least for Americans, shifted on that day 19 years ago. We are in a different kind of traumatic shifting even now. It's not a one-day event. It's an experience of suffering and even death, but spread out over weeks and months. But the one thing that that in my reflections, I see as a commonality in these two very different traumas. It is true that the pandemic is worldwide and not just limited to America, the United States, but what I'm realizing is just how resilient the human spirit is, and how much courage and compassion is expressed in moments of deepest trauma. That was certainly the case on 9/11 and the weeks and months and even years that followed. And I am witnessing it again in that human compassion and courage that is so resilient. So it's a different experience this year to be remembering and in some ways commemorating the 9/11 attacks in the midst of this pandemic that we are experiencing now. It is an odd, it's an odd experience, but it does show the human spirit in ways that we don't think about when things are going along in what we would call normal. One survivor of 9/11 expressed her feelings this way. She said that on September 11th, I always take the day off. I want to be in a peaceful, quiet place, praying. It is a day I both mourn and celebrate. I understand that for someone who lived through and survived, both of those emotions are potent. So, in honor of Janelle, the survivor's name was Janelle, I want to leave you with a prayer written by a UU minister, Gary Kowalski. So I offer these words to you this evening of September 11th. And he begins the prayer as a morning prayer. So I'm going to read it as he wrote it. We gather on this beautiful morning, the anniversary of a day painful to remember, but impossible to forget. We remember all the heroes and heroines of that day, the firefighters and emergency responders who demonstrated such courage in the midst of crisis. We remember the innocents who perished, our friends and neighbors, and the thousands of strangers who were victims of random violence. We remember knowing for a moment that we were connected to each precious life, to the survivors and to those who died, with a bond of shared humanity that the forces of hate could never break. We remember the voices that counseled peace, even as our nation prepared for war. and we raise our voices still against fanaticism in all its forms, against jihad, against militarism, against racism, and religious intolerance, praying that the conflagration of that day might even now cast a more gentle light, leading to a future where all people can live in freedom and without fear. May it be so, and namaste.